Okay, everyone. Welcome to ProMindTive episode 2 about navigating the shadows of anxiety. So before we start, just, let's, I'm doing a shout out to Nick Larson's for the Silicon Valley Zombie Podcast to support this channel. For those of you from the Bay Area, there will be a summit coming up soon about living longer, healthier, and living and healthier life. Discover the latest scientific breakthrough and about learning how to incorporate them into your daily life for happier and live longer. So enjoy inspiring talks, engaging panels, and hands-on workshop with top experts in biotechnologies, healthcare, nutrition, and fitness. Gain valuable insights and connect with the community passionate to thrive in the future. So don't miss it. Link is down below. Currently, the ticket is 25% discount. It's selling, so I will drop the discount code down below if you're interested. I would strongly recommend for you if you want to live longer and educate yourself to be more healthier and happier in the future. So going back to the anxieties, today's podcast, what we're covering. So we will uncover what is anxieties about, what is really anxieties, what's it, why it's happening, and most importantly, how could we manage it? We hear from expert individual who's facing anxiety heads on and find a way to overcome the obstacle despite fighting through the negativity and the obstacle course. I'm your host, Abdus, and today we will be taking a deep dive into the one of the most common and yet misunderstood challenge of anxiety. So please introduce yourself, everyone.
Hi, my name is Ramanagiri. I'm the producer.
Hello, my name is Angelina, and I'm the tech coordinator, and I'll be moderating the stream today.
My name is Casey Chambliss, and I am a certified trauma recovery specialist as well as a current student in bachelor's health. My bachelor's program in behavioral health sciences on path to become a clinical psychologist.
Hi, my name is Ashlyn, and I'm just here because I'm the guest and I'm going to be speaking on my experiences.
Welcome. Thank you for coming today, Ashley.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, Roman, would you mind take it away?
Yes. So, guys, last episode we did shoot. Thank you for everybody who watched. And I do want to say sorry to Casey. We were calling her Cassie the entire time, and we've been referring to her as Cassie. So, Casey, I'm sorry. We're referring to you as Cassie. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump into the questions that we have. Uh, So first one, we'll go ahead and start off with Casey. What is the best technique used in the field, everyday life that works best for you and people with anxiety?
That is a great question, and honestly, the connection that you mentioned with regards to my name, that is probably the biggest source of anxiety with me for so many different things because my name can be spelled as Cassie. And it is very, very anxiety inducing for me to correct people and or be like, is Casey like because I don't want to there's so many different issues that I don't want people to feel bad, not that people would feel bad, but it's just so anxiety, right? It is those unyielded thoughts and fears that just ruminate and top on top of each other and make it so that it yields you unable to speak on it or unable to overcome these fears. So for I'll say to speak on that specifically, with regards to how I try to, I think it's a great example of poor handling of my anxiety and then the trying to overcome it. Whereas having deep breaths, there's a lot of different calming and grounding techniques that are used, but ultimately I kind of wear mine, and that is the dual stones and or crystals, and using those to breathe but to ground and allow myself to try to be present and recognize the world does not operate on the basis of how my fears work. Everyone's or the things, the experiences that I'm going to go through are so exaggerated, and it's not akin or real to life. But that's not something that I was able to understand in my 20s, or I'm in my early 30s, especially not in my teenage years. It's that feeling, regardless, the anxiety. So breathing techniques is one of the things that helped me immediately. There's box breathing is something that you utilize to breathe in for 3 seconds, creating one box, right, one side, and then you exhale, hold for 3 seconds, and then you exhale for 3 seconds. We can try now real quick, but we'll inhale for 3, 1, 2, 3, hold, 2, 3, and exhale, 2, 3, and then you hold, 2, 3, and it is that cycle and allows you to breathe. Now, disclaimer, too much deep breathing can cause a heightened anxiety attack. So be mindful of that. If you're feeling like the deep breathing is too much and it's, causing lightheadedness or what have you, definitely make sure you're being mindful. But the second real life application that I would say, and it's something that I know is widely applicable and a lot of people are able to use, is the opposite is true for me, but similar. It's called the wet noodle. And what that is, you automatically and intentionally tense up specific areas. You tense up intentionally your shoulders or your arms or your back, and then you release it and you release that tension. Breathe out, and it allows yourself to calm. I'm not to get scientific, but the parasympathetic nervous system, as opposed to you literally being in your fight or flight response mode. So I would say those are the two biggest real world applicable tips that I would say as far as anxiety. It's something I've definitely struggled with since I was a child, and can definitely speak on the stigmas and just all of the different things, but want to confirm and affirm that you're not alone, that it is okay, and you will get through this. That I promise.
Definitely. I mean, I feel like
Great.
anxieties come from many, like, form of factors in terms of like what causing it. But I feel like, and how do you know like too much is too much for anxieties? And when that comes, like, how can we overcome that, like that, that strong urge emotion? How can we control that? Like to make yourself to not make yourself too overwhelmed in that situation in the situation.
Absolutely, that's a great question. And with that, there's each person is going to have a different threshold as far as where they are at and what they can tolerate anxiety wise. For a long time, my tolerance level was really low. And so I had to have totems on my person, right? Like a necklace, my wedding ring, and or specifically, this is one I do recommend. I'm not sure if you can see it, but it's a rolling Russian wedding ring, but it rolls. It's anxiety. So when I'm fidgety or when I'm anxious, and again, this if we're doing a scale, right? Here's the normal, non-anxious, and I'll start to fidget right about there. Start to feel uncomfortable, we'll just go ahead and make myself feel comfortable. We'll just, try to get out that anxiousness, get out that energy. Because when it's piled up, it's gonna get more. It's gonna blow itself out of proportion, and I'll end up ruminating, and a lot of others will. You end up ruminating on that fear, and or ruminating on the anxiety, ruminating on the stressor, leading to kind of a paralysis mode. You're there's so many different things that you're stressed in. But with respect to directly knowing, when it's too much, if there's a point in which, you're seeing a pattern, right, at every class, at the beginning of class, and or at the end of class, or when I'm about to leave my home, when I'm about to go talk to to this person, when I'm going to go speak to this, and various different things you might notice, patterns. You might notice yourself having a sense of, heightened emotional response, or you might feel that your window of emotional tolerance is fully starting to decrease, and it'll take very little to tip you into that anxious stress state. So I feel like mitigation of points, looking at where your life is, where you're at, how much stress, how much responsibility, how much you're taking on compared to how much self-care you're doing, how much time you're allowing yourself to be empathetic, to be not productive, not academic, not learning, that time where you can be a couch potato, that time to be resilient. Because if you're not allowing that rest time, that downtime, then, that anxiety is going to just keep going. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the sentiment of the boiling frog, and it's a great term with respect to, not just, abuse, but anxiety, when it builds and builds and builds and you don't have a release, or you don't have something set up that'll allow you to ground in the present, it's like cooking a frog, when you not that I cook a frog, but not that I judge cooking a frog, but saying, is having and putting a frog in not boiling water, in room temperature water, and slowly bringing it to a boil. The frog is not going to notice the water getting hot until it's quite frankly boiling and too late. I don't mean to be, graphic and or dark, but with that being said, your anxiety, if unchecked, if unnoticed, if unrecognized, will continue to boil over to the point to where you're burnt out, you're cooked. They recognizing that internal physical response that you're getting.
Honestly, that is very true. There's a lot that it takes for different people. For some people, like you said, even for yourself, your tolerance is low. And that kind of leads into my second question, in which we'll start off with you, Casey, is in your professional, you know, in your professional experience, how would you say that different levels of anxiety are either avoidable or unavoidable at all? Going to class, you feel this anxiety because maybe there's a test coming up, and like that's something you can't avoid. You have to go through it. And we'll go ahead and start off with that.
That's a good question. So, with regards to stress, there's two different types of stress. There's good stress and there's bad stress. Good stress is eustress. Okay. Eustress is like that stress and or fear when you're on the precipice or cusp of doing something great, or doing something long haul, going to a class that's dreaded, or what have you. Something that is that drive. Athletes, right before a game, that stress or what have you. That's called eustress. The thing is that releases cortisol the same way that a negative stress, just the negative impact that has on it. And so with with regards to the sorry, I just lost everything that I said, and or that we were talking about. Could you please repeat the question?
So I was basically just asking, like we have different levels of stress. Some are avoidable and some are totally unavoidable.
Thank
And
you.
speaking about like a class, like, how do you deal with that? And what would you tell somebody seeking advice on such things?
Thank thank you, yes. Building, so the stress, removing tasks, right? Completing tasks. I think that one is gonna be, the one thing that's gonna help with regard to mitigating that stress. But for me personally, what I do and what I tell, my community, with clearly, those who have, severe extreme trauma in childhood, and so stress and anxiety is very high, is having a grounding box. I'm gonna put mine now because I was like, oh, we're doing anxiety. Let's talk about that. And it's just that, grounding box. It's a little plastic, box, and in it, and I do have printed out the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding tool, which is 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 you can taste. And in it, it's not just a little guide to remind myself, because when you're anxious filled, it's difficult to remember a steps and or task based procedure, because this has um,
Casey, do you mind repeating that? We're having trouble hearing you.
All right, is that better?
Yes.
So with that is the grounding box, a cotton ball or a cotton round or something, a paper towel, with a scented oil, tangerine, because the house I grew up with had an orange tree, which big spikes. But anyways, that being said, that grounds me. That scent and smell. Some people have chamomile or lavender, and then the taste. I have the pink starburst. I do have three of them in there because you're going to want more than one. But then additionally, I have stones, the touch, different crystals specifically. And with that little kit, and this can be anything for you, whatever it is
Oh,
that helps you ground and or
okay.
remain
We'll
present
be
and or
starting in three,
prepare
two.
for anxious times, prepare for classes that are going to be anxiety inducing. I am recovering from a tad bit of agoraphobia, so being in and around public, being around people, trying to enter into classes again, it is very anxiety inducing. And so, with that, I have was actually my backpack. So, it's different grounding tools to prepare myself. And honestly, having and knowing that I have these tools ready for myself available really does help reduce the anxiety as well.
Great, thank you so much. I think that's awesome. I I think like my grounding is my necklace, and my necklace came from my dad. I always wear it, no matter what I'm doing, except when I'm showering, of course. That's a little disgusting. But I always wear it because I always want to have him with me in some way, shape, or form. He's the strongest man I know. So like him, whenever I feel it, like just feeling it, like without touching it, I just hear him in my head, or I hear him like in my ear, like telling me like to breathe, something, the right thing to do, to think about what I'm going through, whether it's like something really big or something really small. So I just have that, and that's super awesome that maybe some people don't know about is that grounding box. I don't know if that's something that you sell or that you make by yourself, but that would be awesome for people to go ahead and incorporate that into their lives. You know, all those things. I might even do that myself. I don't get stressed out a lot, but even when I do, I like to have something that can ground me, where it's like, okay, I'm out of my element. I need to come back down. So thank you for that. So next, we're head to Ashlyn. Ashlyn, can you go ahead and speak the anxiety that you feel for things that are unavoidable, and things that you feel like you can avoid in your life?
Yeah, of course. Well, starting off, something I really struggle with when it comes to anxiety is that I have the bad habit of pushing myself into situations I know I can't handle, just for the thought of like being good enough to my parents and people around me just to impress them. And then when I'm put in the situation, I'm like, oh, wait, what do I do? And I start panicking. And if I'm being honest, I'm not gonna lie, I don't think this is something I can avoid because I've accepted who I am, and I have the habit of like constantly just bringing myself and putting myself into situations I know I can't handle. Like, for example, I joined soccer this year and I suck at soccer. I don't know anything about it, but I was just like, oh, I just want to experience something new. But now that I saw these girls that know exactly what to do and they look like really mean, I'm like, oh, what do I do now? And I just started panicking. I started shaking. I started fidgeting. And yeah.
I think that's super true. We might put ourselves in situations where, again, the shoes are too big to fill. Uh, we feel like maybe we don't belong there. But I think that all situations like that are good for us. It helps us learn. It helps us become comfortable within those situations, because in life we will reach those situations where we get placed in a place where we exactly don't want to be. Maybe the expectations are too high. Maybe we have jump into soccer, because maybe we don't like soccer, maybe we're not good at soccer, but we're jumping into something. And I think those are some of the good things, the good anxiety that Casey was talking about. These things help us build as person, but there's also bad anxiety where we put that pressure on ourselves, and the only person who's doing it is the person in the mirror. So those are things that we can go ahead and look at. And then we're going to go ahead and to move on to our next question. Casey, this one is for you. The question is, what are some common misconceptions about anxiety that you encounter when you're in your practice?
Ooh, that's a good question. There's a lot of misconceptions. I feel like, your anxiety or
Casey, we're having trouble hearing you again.
better.
Okay, it's better now.
With that, I was gonna say the uh, could you repeat the question?
Yes, of course. We were just talking about like the
I'm sorry.
misconceptions that you experience, within your practice about anxiety.
Misconceptions, yes, misconceptions. So many different misconceptions. One that it's a moral failure to have anxiety. It's not a moral failure at all. It is extremely common to have anxiety, and it's okay. It's okay. It's something that you can overcome. And I think what one of the things a lot of that you know,
You're cutting out again, Casey.
All right, is that better?
Yeah, we could hear you.
I'm going to try to be quick ninja like with regards to muting myself because I don't want to echo or feedback when you guys are talking. But with that, the moral, yeah, it's not a moral failure to have anxiety. It is extremely common. But the best thing that I would say advice wise on that is instead of leaning into the fear, leaning into the anxiety, is doing it afraid, right? And that's a common misconception, is that it's you have and or hold and or confirm the fear, validate the fear. You create excuses, you add different things and allow yourself to have that anxiety. And with it, with respect to especially when there are experiences that validate the anxiety or validate the fear, that makes it so much harder to release. But the misconception absolutely is that anxiety isn't connected to your mental health or isn't connected to your self-care or it isn't connected to anything else. It absolutely, your anxiety is connected to so many different facets of your unprocessed trauma, of your unprocessed task, or on your of your unprocessed just daily emotional needs that haven't been met, and or again, that fear or a lack of support system. There's so many reasons why that anxiety can happen, but ultimately, you know you can and will overcome it. And don't listen to that fear and or misconception that it's always going to be like this or anything like that. And the second misconception I would say is a lot of individuals can feel like their people are faking it. People with anxiety are faking this reason, or they're not adult enough or too childish or over emotional or all the different things. Not I'm definitely regurgitating things I've heard, all for various points in my life. But ultimately, anxiety is real. Anxiety is not only a mental, response, a psychological response, it's a physical response. It physically affects your body. And so having compassion for others, but also compassion for yourself is so important. And those are, I would say, probably the roundabout, grandstanded, way varied topic answer to your question on the misconceptions about anxiety.
I have a question. It's like how so I know anxiety plays a big factors, but like how can like if someone were to do something like something very different and unique, and especially like when we have the anxieties of like being feared of like what's the worst gonna happen. I mean, our mind playing always like to play games with us, just saying like if we do this, like that's gonna there's something have the worst outcome gonna be it's gonna hurt, it's gonna happen to us. But what I'm asking is like, how can we challenge our mind to tell ourselves this is not impossible. We can overcome this anxieties, and we can power through it, and we can make a good achievement out of our anxiety.
That's a great question. I think you said the key word, which is challenge your mind, or the key words, challenge your mind. And this is one of the things that I use, and I when learning it in class, I was just like, what? And it is just that, mocking your own anxiety rhetoric, the things that you say in your head. For instance, a lot of things that repeats on in my head, is you're everyone hates you. No one likes you. You're going to fail in your classes. You're going to fail in your assignments. You're going to fail at this. And so when I have that thought literally going in my mind, everyone hates you. That's how I say it back. Everyone hates you. Like literally, I mock that voice back and I repeat the exact same fear back to myself in my head, but in a very just mocking. And you can do it in a various different ways. And it's no, not behavioral expression. I'm forgetting the proper terminology. I do apologize for it. But is really kind of putting the erroneous aspect of those, showing them and affirming, in yourself, everyone hates you. Why? Have you done something to make everyone hate? Like, have you gone on like a spree of like violence and or like spewing like hateful things and or insulting? No, absolutely not. And I think about this a lot is if our anxieties were to run on our fears, like think about it, right? I used to take the bus. Oh, I still take the bus. City buses, and getting on the bus, I get anxious, like, oh, everyone's gonna think I'm weird. Everyone's gonna think I'm like ugly or just like awkward and just like, get on, just weird, right? That's my feeling. And if that was like right, I got on the bus and everyone on the bus, you're weird bus. We don't want you. What? Oh my lands, can you imagine if the world actually operated like that? And that's one thing I feel like, is that we can check ourselves and heed. And for the most part, that's not how the world works, outside of specific circles that really appreciate that comedic like jab and stand up. But it is just that, it is the mocking of that tone, and it really does help. I feel like, place it in that trivial aspect and allowing you to kind of release that fear that's been beholden onto you.
I think
I
that's true.
understand. Hmm.
Mhm.
Go ahead, please.
So, yeah, he's basically, I hate to say that, but it's very true. It kind of leads me into my next question, in which, you know, we all think that we have some sort of anxiety. Some of us think we have more than others. Maybe we undervalue whatever it is or undermine it. Casey, sorry, Casey, in your professional opinion, how do you know exactly when a person should reach their limit and go, okay, this is enough, enough is enough. My anxiety is at a level where it's too high for me to, handle by myself. Should I go seek professional help?
That's a great question. That's a great question. Yeah, I would say, if you're at a point in which, oh, well, one, if you feel you're getting anxious, if you feel that stress, always and or immediately start to have those breaths. Take those breaths, start to ground yourself. Like that's not something you should push off, right? If you feel yourself, having that anxiety and it's impacting your productivity, it's impacting your day, you know, and you're not taking those steps to give yourself self-care, to have that downtime. And you're seeing that it is a repetitive thing and or just this is something that you haven't experienced before, reach out to a therapist. There's no need that you have to have in order to talk to a counselor or talk to a therapist, in order to talk to someone about what you're going through. And with it, having that space, having that time, there's so many different aspects of, to access, therapy, through your school, the counselors, always the psychology and or behavioral health departments will have counseling services available for free. You can go there and talk to someone. And with it, but if anxiety is impacting you, and it is making it so that you're not able to go through your life and or go through your day with either a quality of life right? You're ruminating constantly, you're always stressed, you're always shaking. Absolutely, before it's impacting you, reach out to someone to talk. Outline specifically, and that's not to say that when you go to a counselor, or when you go see a therapist, that they're going to start like diagnosing and labeling you with everything. Oh, this is what generalized anxiety disorder. Here's a bunch of pills. No, 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 no. The first thing is always just talk about it and trying to build those skills to help with regards to grounding yourself in those times of stress and anxiety. So I would say if you're thinking about talking to a therapist, talk to a therapist.
Great, thank you. And then, I haven't heard from you in a while. You know, really, how difficult is it for you, maybe somebody else, speaking about anxiety to a loved one, to a friend, or just in general to anybody? And then why do you think that is?
This question was directed towards me, right? It's because you cut off in the beginning. Okay. So
Yes, I'm sorry.
it's okay. I find it really easy to communicate with my family because growing up with them, they always told me to be open no matter how bad it was. I'm always open to speaking to them. The only issue is my friends. I don't It's not that I necessarily don't trust my friends. I just become really alert and I have a fear if I tell someone a secret that I'm like holding against, like it's just really heavy on my back. I cannot tell them because then I'm gonna have another like it's just gonna be like a little burden. I'm gonna be stressing about too much. I'm gonna have that fear that they're gonna go tell someone my personal life, and I just feel like that would really affect me. And that kind of it goes back to me when I was younger. I had a lot of friends, and my first language was not English. My first language was Spanish, and they would talk behind my back a lot because I did not know like English. It wasn't my first language basically, and from there like it slowly created a fear. And I know it sounds sort of like dumb to hold grudges against someone like from elementary, but I feel like what they did really reflects on my future now.
Well, I can understand that. Yeah, yeah. Ashland, I mean, it's just about understanding and who you can trust, like around your circle. I mean, I do have people in my life that I'm very suspicious about, even though like there's people that I know for a while, but still having like keeping that guards up, and even with like guards up, like that has the anxiety part of it too. It's like like when you make decisions, like you always have this like this weird like nervous feeling about like, or like, are we gonna trust them, or are they gonna turn their backs on us and you know, reveal our stuff to their peers, and that makes it very like very anxious of like, so basically we're having a second doubt of like sharing information to other people's, and this is really hard for people to express themselves as well, like even building trust to others. And I feel like it just really depends who, like what kind of people we have in our life to like to to really trustworthy to to really express ourselves for
Yeah.
others to help us.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Mhm.
Was there anything? Oh, wait, sorry.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. If you have something else to say, please, by all means.
No, yeah. Did you like me? Like, would you like me to cover something else? Because like, there's multiple topics, just in case. Because I was like really sure with my
Yeah,
answer.
if you want to go in depth, please, by all means. But if you don't want to, we're not going to force you to do so.
Okay. Well, to begin, it's gonna sound like a lot of like a backstory, but I was born in Brawley, but eventually I moved to Mexico because of my parents' financial status, and I feel like that really affected my life in a way. And when I came back to kindergarten, I had my parents tell me like, "Oh, you're gonna be okay. Just make new friends." And I never thought that language was gonna be a barrier for me, and it was. I used to go to church and I used to go to school, and I never had anxiety because I knew myself from a young age. I was like really that type of social person. I could easily speak to people without being nervous. And I never knew that there was like such thing as like a language barrier until I went to school. I couldn't speak to people and I felt a lot of anxiety and it built up inside me and I was just 5 years old and I was already fidgeting, I was shaking my legs, I was like having trouble talking to people. I would shake when people would speak to me because I would not know how to respond. It was really hard to communicate. And sometimes I would just cry in class to my teacher in specific. And I feel like adults play a really big role in your anxiety. And in this place, my teacher really did not help because from a lot of places, people don't believe in mental health or anxiety, and I feel like it's something you really need to speak about because they just think it doesn't exist because you need to grow up a certain way, you need to toughen up. I feel like if you support a child while growing up and speak to them about anxiety being okay, they can grow. And as Casey said, anxiety isn't always like a necessarily bad thing. It can actually help. It helped me push myself forwards. I don't want to get rid of it completely because sometimes it helps me be like more alert about who's around me. What am I doing? Like, what am I currently doing? And yeah, I just feel like it's helped me in a way, but it's also brought me down. And I hope I can get rid of like all the negative factors. But yeah.
I really like that, Ashlyn. I don't know exactly what point I should hit on first. There's so many good ones. The fact that you're bringing up how there's some good ones in I think everybody needs that. Everybody needs to have those quote unquote good anxieties within our life in order to keep on building us. Again, to keep our senses like heightened. If we're around certain people, if we're in a certain area, and honestly, I had that very recently where I just didn't talk to a lot of people in college. It was like I knew everybody when I was in high school, and then I don't know anybody here, even though we're all from like the same small place. But nonetheless, it felt weird. I couldn't talk to anybody. I was super shy. It took me a while, and finally, somebody broke me out of my shell. And then slowly but surely, I had that anxiety, but I still kept at it because I wanted to get rid of this certain anxiety because I felt that it was bad towards me. It was hindering my quote unquote college experience and just being social within in everyday life. It really helped me, become the person I am today, the person to meet Abdus and Angelina within this program and create this. And, again, speaking on mental health, it is such an important, topic that, again, we need to be talking about. This is why we created this podcast. Everybody has a voice, everybody needs to be heard. You know, I said this last podcast and I'll say it again. I'll keep saying it, because it is true. And, you know, I think that they're touching upon it in schools, and I think that's awesome because at least they're touching upon it and at least not doing anything at all. I would like, a little bit more emphasis within, maybe the curriculum, maybe a presentation every month. It doesn't have to be every week. It doesn't have to be every day. But this needs to be like the kids because there are some kids who have that anxiety, who have that fear of speaking out. That's why we want this podcast to continue. People like Ashlyn, people like Brendan from our last podcast, to come on here, share their experiences, and go ahead and maybe get some advice from Cassie. Maybe she talks about her experiences, or maybe we talk about our own experiences, so that way when people listen to this they don't feel alone. We want to bring everybody together. I'm not a very touchy person, a very physical, affectionate person, but like I would like this to be a hug. I like to embrace people. I like to give them that warmth, so that way when they come in here, they do feel warm. They don't feel cold. They don't feel shy to open up about things, and they don't feel scared that we're gonna go ahead and talk about it with our other peers because oh so and so was talking about this person and they're going through this in their life. No, we want to listen to them and embrace whatever it is that they're feeling, and then try to direct them on a better path than they already are on. So Abdus, if you have any questions, please by all means.
Like, well, currently I don't have much questions, but I feel like listening to your story is very inspiring in terms of like, like I do have my own personal struggles, like in schools, like like, I found myself in a very isolated like atmosphere. Then, speaking of anxieties, I feel like like having people around me that is not willing to communicate makes it very difficult to like to even talk to them. It's since they're not opening up and talk, this kind of has a negative influence over me in terms of uh like having an introverted, like becoming more of an introvert, not able to express who I am. And at the same time, later in time I feel like I start to develop an anxiety over just communicating with people, and I find it really hard. I find it really hard to work with people, but by listening to today's podcast, I feel like this helps me utilizing my inner voice to help fight my anxiety, to overcome these obstacles, which everyone have their own throughout their life. But I want to remind everyone this is not we're not dealing this alone, but we're all fighting this journey together.
Agreed. Couldn't have said it better. I do have another question, and then this is for Casey. So regarding, anxiety, this is all mental. What aspects within like our everyday life do you think play a factor in that? So whether it's we wake up early, we wake up and we don't work out, maybe people working out, and this like helps them with their anxiety, like what are everyday aspects within people's lives that you think could help and like help what is the word, help their anxiety, so it's not as high as it should be, or maybe it's just, not as high as it was yesterday, and it slowly, decreases.
Absolutely, absolutely. Routine for me helps. I know I've had a lot of others, say routine. Um, in the past, when I've been able to wake up early and do the whole working out in the morning, I've seen great impact. And it doesn't have to be, like severe workouts or like, intense. It can be a walk around the block, it can be a jog, it can be something that it gets you outside and it really helps to start loosen you out of that shell and loosen you into public, as I like to call it, terrifying place. But it is that, it is having a routine and having that, looking at where your anxieties, lay, why, they're anxiety inducing and seeing what you can do about that and mitigating. If classwork and or studying is a big stressor, maybe try to outline an hour a day or 45 minutes a day to dedicate to a specific class or a specific, studying or just studying in general. Having that for me personally, daily aspect of routine really does help. And in addition to having, like I said, that mental health, that self-care, that ability to do what it is you want to do, what brings you joy, what makes you happy, if that's playing video games, if that's watching, some TV that is what is reality TV or various different things, like if it's reading romance smut novels, like do it, like it's okay, right? Like have that time, allow yourself the ability to relax, to release, to recover and recoup, right? Because your body is only going to be able to withstand going at like 120% for so long before you burn out. And so that is just what I would recommend most is, having a routine, building a routine, and it doesn't have to be stringent. It doesn't have to be strict. It doesn't have to be, every 30 minutes of your day outlined, but just, in the morning, I'd like to do this. I'd like to have a balanced meal, making sure you're eating and drinking water, hydrating yourself. These things really do play a part in your health, in your mental well-being, and in your physical well-being. And that is not, I'm not trying to be ableist or say, different things and not be sensitive to the different abilities, if you're ADHD or neurodivergent. For me specifically, I'm very ADHD in addition to all the different fun things, but I have textile sensitivities with food and among other various things. Temperature doesn't matter regardless. Planning food can be anxiety. Cooking can be anxiety. Figuring out how to feed myself. Why is it so anxiety inducing? I'll just reside to not eating. It's too much stress. So planning out those things, preparing either a meal plan, buying groceries or specific things that allow you to eat in a way that is accessible to you, right? If eating fruit is accessible, awesome, do fruit. If eating fruit isn't accessible and you end up throwing away those grapes every single week, don't get the grapes, and or pre-clip them. That's what I thought. Pre-clipping the grapes that we just bam, grab them out and go. But anyways, it's just finding what works for you.
Oh yes, that's amazing. I mean, it's like now you mention it, now that reminds me. It's like so what happened if like anxiety like take over your daily schedule, like, and have that ever happened to you? And if that did happen to you, like, how would you fight that anxiety, like, to help get yourself back on the routine?
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, there was at one point in 2017, it was the traumaversary of an event, the first one. And with it, the anxiety was super high PTSD anxiety really does. And so I found myself in debilitating anxiety attacks that I would literally, be on the floor hyperventilating for, hours and hours and hours and hours. It just, affected my work. I asked to start working from home because I found myself just anxiety attack, hyperventilating under my desk, right? And so, I asked to try to go home, right, to see if that would, lessen the anxiety. And ultimately that didn't. That just allowed me to then have debilitating anxiety attacks for the entire time that my child was not at home. But that being said, aside, is in those moments when that was, the debilitating, the anxiety, the fear, the again the especially like I mentioned earlier, when experiences confirm or validate your fears or anxieties, it's very difficult to pull yourself out of it. And so in those times, when it's overwhelming, when it's too much, reach out to someone to talk. You're not alone, even when you're feeling like you're alone, even when it is perceived and or the text you're receiving is not a confirming of, your roundabout way of asking if they have time or space to talk. If you're able to directly, hey, do you have time to talk? Hey, can you talk? Hey, I'm having a hard time. You know, I'm struggling a lot. And in those instances, how you feel comfortable, making that comment, saying those words either through text or in a phone call or face to face, however it is, it's okay. And I promise and guarantee you that your loved ones are more than willing, more than happy, and are excited to help support you in that mind. And if there aren't loved ones, if you're away from loved ones because you traveled for school or any of those things, reach out to your campus, reach out to your school, reach out to your work. There are different groups, there are different activities. There are also social clubs, which can be intimidating as well, but that are virtual. I've found so much activity for communities and having that veil of being able to talk, right, and have that space. But ultimately, that's the biggest thing that I would say is that you're not alone. You know, it is okay to talk to someone and give yourself grace. Give yourself grace. We're going through so much, and having that grace for yourself, giving yourself kindness. And if you're able to, we can be empathetic, to our neighbors, right? We can be empathetic to, our friends or to our parents or to our family. But I feel like a lot of times we stop short on being empathetic with ourselves. And if you're struggling, it's okay. It's okay. Have that breath. Take a breath. And I know that can be the most condescending thing to say. Just relax. Take a breath. Take a breath. Reach out.
Mm. Well, so most importantly, like, how to be okay when you're not okay.
100%, 100%. The human experience is filled with a vast amount of array of emotions that, some of them are good, some of them aren't necessarily feeling good. But the only way to process, especially traumas or to process anxieties, is to process through them. Not just bottling them up and shoving them aside.
Mhm. Understand. Thank you so much. I mean, so far, like, Angelina, like, do you have any questions from the chat?
Not really. However, I found Casey, my apologies, Casey's advice on how to like handle anxiety very helpful, and like how it's normal. We all struggle, and like we have to be kind to ourselves because we would be kind to another person if they were struggling too.
All right. I think that almost does it. We're going to go ahead and start wrapping up right now. Ashlyn, if you have any questions for Casey, by all means, if you have any questions for us, if there's something else that you'd like to address as well, please, by all means, you have the floor.
Okay, so since Casey started speaking on eating habits and exercising, it actually reminded me of how a year ago I was overweight, and it was it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to be at a certain spot in your life, but this actually caused me to be insecure in myself. And when you're insecure, you can't enjoy things as well as like you usually would. So I wouldn't really associate myself with group clubs, like anything in school, like ASB or any like cool clubs in general. That was mainly because I hated my self image. It was just that issue that I would struggle with, and I felt that anything that I did was embarrassing, even though it wasn't. Even if I was just simply existing, I just thought it was so embarrassing, so I wouldn't join anything. And I slowly picked up healthy eating habits. I started exercising for the best. I started like growing self discipline, and that's what's it brought me here. Actually, I wouldn't have been in this meeting right now if I didn't start that, because HOSA is a club that's like about mental health and physical health. It recommended this meeting to me, this podcast, and I found that really meaningful, and I'm really glad you guys invited me to this.
Thank you, Ashlyn. I appreciate those kind words. We appreciate you being here, you sharing your story. That's a beautiful story, by the way. You know, to be in a place where you feel like maybe it's your lowest point, or you would tell yourself, "Oh, this has to be my lowest point. I cannot hit more. I can't reach lower than this point." And then making a change about it. That's honestly one of the things that I look for. Even speaking in high school, I know you're in high school right now. One of the points where I went back to school, it was my senior year. I just hated the person I was, and I hated myself when I went to college. And then slowly but surely, I'm starting to like myself again. I don't love myself just yet, but that's okay because I like myself more than I did yesterday and the day before, and even, months ago and years ago. And that's all I can, ask for. And that's what I'm striving for. So one day that, you know, the high is much higher than the low. And hearing that, it reminded me just of that right now. I try to forget about, well, not exactly forget about. I like to think about what happened, what can I do better, and how can I improve each and every day, because we want to be the best person we can possibly be. Thank you so much for sharing that, Casey. If you have any questions for us, if you like to address anything, please, by all means, you have the floor.
I just thank you and appreciate you guys so much for, holding the space for, continuing to, be on that front side of, destigmatizing mental health to, continuing to show vulnerability in these spaces, for bringing up, those like Ashlyn and individuals to share those, our stories and our experiences. It really, really does make an impact. So just thank you so much. And just, yeah, confirm you're not alone. You guys got this.
Well, I strongly believe it's like even people coming out here to share the story is a big milestones to inspire others to get out their comfort zone and even demonstrate like it's a big anxiety to be out there in the world, especially on YouTube. Like, I mean, there's people out there that might judge, and it depends on positive or negative. Like, but since making a commitment to come out here to talk with us today, I mean, you have taken the one of first step, you know, to voice your voice like to our communities to show like our voice is powerful in a way if we know how to share it to others, and even having if not knowing how to share, have others to help you share the voice.
Thank you. Casey, you have been terrific. You've been more than awesome. You've been awesome for us when we first met you, for the past, this podcast and the last podcast. Just thank you so much for sharing your time with us. We would hope that maybe we do get to do a future podcast in the future. But if not, then I wish you well. I wish you the best. There's not enough words that I can say right now to express my gratitude for the time that you, Ashlyn, and our past guest Brendan have just to share with us. Truly, we really appreciate it.
Like I said earlier, I'd like to thank Cassie so much for the advice you've been giving us about this, about anxiety. And I'd also like to thank Ashlyn because sharing your story and seeing how, even though we usually see anxiety as something very negative, how you're able to turn it into something positive is very inspiring. Thank you.
Abdus, I don't know if you have any concluding thoughts. Go ahead and
Oh,
take it away.
all right. So wait, hold on. Can you hear me? All right, sounds good. All right. So before we close off, I mean, I want to give a special thanks to Cassie and Ashlyn to come out here today to spending their important time of the day. I mean, with their opinions and stories, they makes a significant difference, and I appreciate every word that come out of your stories. And I have to thank you, every one of you. If it wasn't for all of you today, this would not this podcast would not happen. And but I know this is about all of us. We went through blood and sweat, but at the end of the day, it will be all worth it. And I would say thank you so much for your times, and even be vulnerable enough to express yourself with your very sensitive prompts. And with that said, and so far, is there any more questions, concerns before we conclude this?
I think that's all. I think we're set.
All right, sounds good. And I'll do closing then. All right then, everyone. Thank you for attending our event, and stay tuned for our next episode of ProMindTive. There will be more future contents, and please check us out. This is a matter of sharing our voice to our communities, and we want to make a big difference. And every voice counts. It's about networking. For a problem, we share our problems, and someone will eventually come up with a solution to help you and your communities. And with that said, once again, please check out Nick Larson's help health summit. Make good connections and be vulnerable. Talk to people that want to help you out there. It's all worth it in the future. And and with that said, thank you everyone, and have a good, fantastic evening.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you guys so much. You guys have a great